Life at 46, well, it's been a tough road. The divorce hit hard, and now I'm juggling these never-ending financial worries. I mean, child support and the mortgage payments? They're like an anchor around my neck. I just can't shake this feeling that I've let my family down, especially my kids. It's a real heavy load to bear. I've had to cut back on everything, and it's a constant battle between making ends meet and keeping everyone happy. Honestly, it's left me feeling pretty drained, like I'm just running on fumes most days. So, I figured I needed a plan to get my mental health back on track. I decided to head out to a forest cabin about 100 kilometers away from home and spend some time there all by myself. I'm hoping that in the quiet of nature, I can find some inner peace, shake off these pressures, and get myself back on track. When I arrived at the remote mountain cabin, it was deep into autumn, and the trees around were painted with beautiful shades of fiery red and orange. The whole scenery had this eerie charm, and as I walked closer to the cabin, the leaves under my feet made a crisp, crunching sound. It was the heart of fall, and the leaves in the forest seemed to be burning like flames, adding a touch of mystery to this serene mountain area. I had come to this cabin seeking refuge, an escape from the pressures of the modern world. Here, I anticipated finding a calm unity with nature, yet I couldn't help but be drawn in by the mysterious atmosphere of these silent woods. Every day, I lived a routine life. In the morning, I'd light up the fireplace, brew a pot of coffee, and sit by the window, watching autumn leaves dance in the wind. During the day, I often took long walks in the forest, exploring the wilderness and getting up close with nature. Initially, everything felt fulfilling and delightful, almost like the life of a hermit in the countryside. However, as time passed, a strange fear began to creep into my soul. It was an inexplicable fear with no clear origin. I felt like I was no longer alone, as if some presence was secretly watching me. I continued with the same daily routine, but I started feeling increasingly uneasy. This cabin, once a sanctuary for my soul, had now turned into my soul prison. The cold of the season seeped through the cabin's feeble walls, intensifying my sense of isolation. I was alone with my thoughts, surrounded by the rustling leaves and the distant howl of the wind. But solitude is a double-edged sword, and it was slowly turning against me. My grasp on reality began to waver, and the boundaries between the tangible and the intangible became blurred. As the autumn days grew shorter, the feeling of being watched intensified. I couldn't shake the sense that unseen eyes were upon me, hidden in the woods that surrounded the cabin. Sleep became elusive, and the autumn winds whispered strange secrets. In the evenings, I started seeing some really strange things. The trees outside turned into twisted figures, their branches like claws, as if they wanted to reach inside the cabin. Sometimes, I felt they might break through the windows, trying to get closer to me. And then, I saw some blurry faces with empty, malevolent eyes. These faces muttered strangely outside the window, making bizarre sounds, but I had no idea what they were saying. It was as if they were trying to convey some message, but I was completely clueless. Furthermore, I began to hear some odd sounds, like low, mournful cries coming from the distant woods. The sound was just too eerie, with constant wailing, and it sounded very unusual. At times, I even suspected it might be coming from some kind of monster or ghost. These hallucinations filled me with extreme fear and confusion, and I had no idea whether they were real or if my exhausted brain was playing tricks on me. Either way, they made the isolation of the cabin even more terrifying. I muttered to myself, "It's just your imagination, just the isolation getting to you. Why can't I sleep? Why do those whispers seem so real?" I questioned whether the threats were real or figments of my imagination. Am I losing my mind? Is any of this even real? The boundaries between the known and the unknown grew ever more hazy. I used to know what was real, but now I'm not so sure. Every night, as darkness fell, I would see blurry figures moving outside the cabin's windows. "Who's out there? What do you want from me?" This fear made it difficult for me to sleep. I just need to make it through the night. Just one more night. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination. It's all in my head. There's nothing out there. But to no avail. In this isolated place, I could no longer be certain if I was truly alone. I wish I could be sure of anything anymore. By the 68th day I was at my wit's end, hanging on the edge of sanity. The isolation, the non-stop fear, and the downright paranoia had done a number on me. I had to ditch that cabin, but I was too darn scared to set foot outside. Trust me, I couldn't even trust my own noggin at that point, but I had no other option. So, with my hands shaking like a leaf, I swung open that cabin door and stepped right into the blinding snow. The wild unknown stretched out before me. And I wasn't sure if what awaited me was salvation or another layer of torment. As I made my way through the relentless snow, it was hard to shake off the feeling of dread that had clung to me throughout my time at the isolated cabin. My steps left deep impressions in the fresh snowfall, marking my path as a solitary wanderer. The biting cold nipped at my exposed skin, and the eerie silence of the forest was deafening. The once fiery autumn leaves now lay hidden beneath a thick, frozen blanket. As I ventured further through the relentless snow, the eerie silence of the forest gave way to an unexpected sound. Howling. It started as a distant and haunting melody but soon grew louder and more numerous. My heart quickened its pace as I realized I was not alone in these woods. The path ahead was obscured by falling snow, but through the curtain of white, I caught glimpses of shadowy forms moving swiftly among the trees. Wolves. A pack of them. Their howls created an unsettling symphony, and I knew that my journey had taken a perilous turn. I tried to retrace my steps, but the relentless snowfall had covered my tracks. Panic set in as the wolf pack closed in, their yellow eyes gleaming with hunger and predatory instinct. There was nowhere to hide, and I was acutely aware of my vulnerability. Desperation pushed me forward. I needed to find shelter, something to fend off the relentless predators. As I forged ahead, the howling grew louder, and the first of the wolves came into sight. Their fur was a mix of white and gray, camouflaged in the snowy landscape, and their lean bodies were built for speed and stealth. I spotted an old, abandoned cabin, barely standing amidst the snowy landscape. It was a slim chance, but I had no other option. I sprinted toward it, my heart racing as the wolf pack closed in. With one final leap, I reached the cabin's door and slammed it shut just in time. The wolf pack gathered outside, their hungry growls and sharp claws scratching at the wooden door. I was safe for now, but I knew I was trapped in this isolated cabin, and the wolves were waiting for their opportunity to strike. Inside the dimly lit cabin, I caught my breath, knowing that I had narrowly escaped becoming prey to the wolf pack. The eerie quiet of the forest outside was punctuated by the occasional growls and howls of the hungry predators, waiting for their chance. The cabin itself was in a state of disrepair. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the wooden walls were weathered and creaking in the cold. There were remnants of the previous occupants' belongings, long forgotten and abandoned. I realized that my escape from this dire situation was only temporary. I needed to fortify the cabin against the relentless wolf pack, which showed no signs of leaving. My eyes scanned the room for anything that could be used as a makeshift barricade. I found an old wooden plank in a corner, which I leaned against the door to reinforce it. It was far from a foolproof defense, but it would buy me some time. My mind raced as I considered my options. My backpack still held some supplies from my time in the remote cabin, including a flashlight and a small first aid kit. I carefully lit the small kerosene lamp on a rickety wooden table, providing a feeble source of light in the dim room. As the night deepened, I heard the wolves outside grow more impatient. Their collective growls reverberated through the cabin, and the situation was becoming increasingly dire. The cabin's walls felt like they were closing in on me. I knew that I couldn't stay in this cabin forever, and my chances of surviving the relentless pursuit of the wolf pack were slim. I needed a plan, a way to escape this dire predicament and make it back to civilization. The hours dragged on, and the cabin was surrounded by the relentless wolf pack. Their eerie, golden eyes glowed in the darkness, fixated on their potential prey inside. I knew I couldn't hide forever, and I had to make a move. I had a few tools and supplies from my previous stay in the cabin. Carefully, I examined the contents of my backpack, which included a small axe, a length of rope, and some canned food. I couldn't stay in this cabin forever, and I knew that facing the wolf pack directly was a death sentence. My best chance was to find a way to signal for help or escape without drawing their attention. My first step was to create a diversion. I opened a can of food and placed it on the wooden table. I then tied one end of the rope to the table and the other end around the handle of the cabin door. The smell of the food wafted through the cabin, and the wolves outside grew more agitated. As they focused their attention on the makeshift bait, I knew it was my chance to make a run for it. I gripped the small axe tightly and took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. With one swift motion, I pulled the door open and bolted into the cold night. The wolves, momentarily distracted by the food, didn't react in time to stop me. I ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest seemed like an endless labyrinth, but I had to keep going. I knew that my only chance was to reach the nearest ranger station and get help. As I ran through the dark woods, I could still hear the distant howls of the wolves. They were on my trail, and I couldn't afford to slow down. The night was long, and my survival was far from guaranteed. The forest was shrouded in darkness, and the howls of the pursuing wolves echoed through the trees. I had been running for what felt like an eternity, my legs aching and my breath ragged. The hope of reaching the ranger station was my only driving force. My surroundings were a blur as I navigated through the dense underbrush, dodging trees and branches. The wolves were relentless, never giving up the chase. Their eyes, gleaming with hunger, were a constant threat lurking in the shadows. I had no choice but to keep moving, despite my exhaustion. Every step was agony, but I pushed forward, determined not to become a meal for the wolves. The distant lights of the ranger station flickered through the trees, a beacon of hope in the otherwise impenetrable darkness. With every ounce of strength I had left, I sprinted toward it. I could hear the wolves closing in behind me, their growls growing louder. It was a race against time, and I could almost feel their hot breath on my heels. Finally, I burst through the tree line and stumbled into the open area surrounding the ranger station. Desperation had given me an adrenaline-fueled surge of energy, and I reached the station just as the wolves closed in. The rangers were alerted by the commotion, and they rushed to my aid, driving the wolves back with loud shouts and flares. The wolves, while relentless, were no match for the determination and firepower of the rangers. I collapsed to the ground, safe at last but trembling with exhaustion. The ranger station had become my sanctuary, a place where I was free from the relentless pursuit of the wilderness. In the following days, I recovered from my physical and emotional ordeal. The rangers told me stories of the mysterious and formidable wolf pack that roamed these woods. They had been a real threat, and my escape from their clutches was nothing short of a miracle. As I looked out of the ranger station's window, I couldn't help but feel a deep respect for the unforgiving wilderness. It was a place of beauty and danger, where solitude could be both a source of peace and a test of one's limits. My journey to find solace in nature had brought me to the brink of disaster, but it had also revealed the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. I had faced my fears and survived, and I would carry the lessons of that harrowing experience with me for the rest of my life. The cabin in the woods would forever be etched in my memory, a place of both darkness and resilience. And as I gazed out into the wilderness, I knew that I had come to understand the true meaning of solitude and survival.